This is an EDC blade from Ozark Traditional Knife Works. It's made in K390, which is similar steel to CPM 10V A11 64 Rockwell. Relatively decent blade. I've been using it in the kitchen and for some general utility work. I had to sharpen it recently, so I did some more stock work on cardboard, reground the edge at the same time. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences with it, and I'll start off with some negative aspects because they're fairly prominent. First, this blade has a forced patina. Forced patinas are becoming more common to the extent that you're even seeing them on blades that have significant chromium content and even on stainless steels. Steels like that will resist a patina very strongly, so it's very difficult to see them form naturally. The downside to them is that forcing a patina on blades with high chromium content generally requires significant exposure to harsh acids, and that's known to cause a detrimental effect on steels. When you combine that with the effects that you can see from overheating and power sharpening, you can end up with some very damaging effects to the edge. The edge retention in this in the kitchen was rather low, but I had seen some orange rust form anyway, so I figured that it could be just the corrosion took away the sharpness of the edge. I reground it, which is another issue, and did some work on cardboard, and the first run the edge retention was rather low. It was similar to an opener, which is a mid-carbon steel blade, hardened in the mid to high 50s. Not really a high standard for edge retention on cardboard. And the edge durability was rather low. It was chipping at a significant level. But again, forced patina, power sharpening, reground the edge off, sharpen it again, did another run on cardboard, and performance was significantly improved, but still couldn't match something like South Fork and S30V from Phil Wilson. So I'm going to, again, do some more cutting with it and then go back and do a few more cardboard trials. I expect the performance to come up. I'm not sure where it will stabilize yet. When I sharpened it, there was a few issues. For one, the edge angle on one side was so low that with a 15-degree setting, I was using the cubic boron nitrile rods on the sharpener. The 15-degree setting put a micro bevel right away. On the other side, the 15-degree setting went right up on the primary grind and was nowhere near hitting the edge. Now, if you're not that experienced with sharpening, that's going to be really frustrating because you'll do some passes on the rods. Hey, I got a burr. Excellent on this side. Do some passes. Nothing. Okay, do a few more passes. Nothing. Do a few more passes. Nothing. You literally had to do around 1,000 passes to get the edge down to apex on this side, whereas at apex is immediately on this side because it's less than 15 degrees per side here, but it's only less than 20 here. One of the many things that I don't like about belt sharpening is that it's very easy to do those kind of angle variances because of how quickly knives belt sharpen. And the other thing was one section of the blade up here was actually above 20 degrees per side, so it took a lot of work to get that down to apex. Again, if you know what's going on, if you know how to make sure where you're sharpening on an edge bevel, not going to be that big of a deal. It's just time consuming. But if this was your first foray into custom knives, had a really good knife, especially with steel like this, which is very hard to grind, it can be kind of frustrating. Make an argument here about what you should expect out of a custom knife in terms of symmetry of edge bevels. The other thing that you'll notice is see how wide the edge bevel is here. It gets very narrow up there, and on this side it's consistently more narrow. That's just because of unevenness in the primary grind. And there's a very easy way to check that. After you've profiled the main bevels on a belt sander or whatever, if you take a true flat stone, like a DMT stone, lay your knife on it and just start doing a few passes, because the DMT is true flat, look at your scratches and see if they uniformly go all the way to the edge. And that will show every little imperfection in your flat grind. Last thing I'll say is that this has lightning strike carbon fiber. All these little copper wires that are in this break off and then stick out. There's one stuck out right there now. And you have to cut them out constantly when you're using the knife. I let it go for about a week just to see how bad it would get, and at the end of the week there was almost a dozen of these little barbs poking out all over the handle, and they just dig into your hand constantly. Now, it's not a huge thing, they're not going to cut your hand open, but it's a knife. The sharp parts shouldn't be on the handle. It's another one of those things which looks kind of nice, performance-wise, completely opposite what you would want. Now, a few general characteristics of the knife. It has that very deep index finger choil, which Fred Perrin has made very popular because it allows good grip security. It's very difficult for your hand to move up, slip up on the blade, but you don't need a prominent guard, so there's nothing getting in the way of you doing overhand grips, so it's very nice for a lot of work. Collie Harris of CKC Knives also uses this style of grip. And it makes it very nice to use in the kitchen because you get nice clearance. Down around here you can work rather tight to a cutting board. This is neither positive or negative, it's just the nature of the knife. This has a full slab handle, which leaves it very handle heavy. It's a rather heavy knife for its size, and the balance is all the way back there. Now, for a knife that you're using around with your finger and around this area as a measure of security, you could sort of make an argument for that because it makes the knife sit in your hand and not want to rotate out. But personally, I just feel it's a detriment because all it does is just forces the knife to press back here, and you'd sort of want the weight more up here because that's where you're controlling it. Be a bit more nimble and agile for me in that respect. But some people like knives with very heavy handles. They just like the way that they feel, and that sort of comfort and security. This has an extended pommel, as I guess sort of a crusher, or even maybe a little pry bar, although it should be tapered. If it was a pry bar, then you could use it sort of as a screwdriver. The downside of using these, if you don't have a full butt cap or pommel cap on here, if you go to strike something and you miss, you will smash into this carbon fiber. This is not really material you want to be smashing into stuff. So, I'm not really sure about the utility of that. Again, if it was nice and tapered, you'd have something that you could use as a pry bar for opening up paint cans, prying apart pieces of wood and stuff like that, which could be kind of useful. But as a crushing type tool, not 100% sure of the utility of that. Relatively standard sheath. One thing that I will say is that it has one of the nicest balances of, it's very secure. It's not going to pop out. I mean, I could get it to come out if I gave this a really hard snap. I could probably get the knife to come out of it. But I don't do a lot of jumping out of airplanes generally, and what I'm looking for is something which will hold the knife in with no rattle, relatively secure. It's not going to follow unless I want it to come out, but you can just pull this out. It comes out much faster if you do a thumb push because you separate this naturally, but very smooth in and coming out. One of the nicest balances I've seen on retention and ease of carry in a while. These clips are somewhat polarizing. A lot of people like them, a lot of people hate them. But interesting little knife. That's just some comments on it, and I'm going to look forward to using it more in the future, getting some more experience, and hopefully the edge retention will turn around and become more representative of steel.